Welcome to Link by Golf, the podcast that brings you inside stories and conversations from the world of golf. I'm Ross McGuire, and today I'm joined by Scotland international Matt Clark, a 10-time Home Internationals player and current national team captain. We talked through Matt's late start in the game at 14, how a neighbour in a broken window led him to pick up a club, and his incredible rise through the amateur ranks. From junior golf at Alloa to competing against the likes of Rory McIlroy, Shane Lowry and Tyrrell Hatton, Matt's story is packed with dedication, humour and perspective. If you're enjoying the podcast, please share it with your friends and follow the show. It really helps grow the community. Let's go over to Matt. Welcome to this week's podcast, Matt Clark. Matt, great to see you. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, Ross. Much appreciated.
No problem. And Matt, we're going to jump right in. So, 10 appearances in a row for Scotland in the Home Internationals. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, proud. Not often I get to put my name aside some of the kind of legends of Scottish golf, and certainly I don't deserve to be there, but that run of consecutive appearances is up there with most of them. So some way behind Charlie Green, but I managed to tie my great mate Craig Watson for something, which is always a nice thing to be able to do. So yeah, nice to achieve it. Obviously took a lot of time and a lot of hard work, but yeah, something I'm proud of.
Yeah, and you should be. I mean, playing for your country against the rival nations every year for that amount of time, that's phenomenal. Really well done.
Yeah, you go through a few different bits when you get to look back on it, some of the players you've played with and against and things like that. It's nice to be able to see, and you see them doing well on the TV, and you've got some stories and anecdotes of the time when you've played with them. And yeah, passionate about it. Back Scottish captain now, so trying to give back that way at this point in time. So yeah, it kind of comes and goes with.
Brilliant. And we'll jump straight in, but we'll go back. So how did you first get into golf, Matt? What was it that got you started?
I was a failed footballer at 14 years old or 13, 14 years old, and I was attempting to kick balls around my mum and dad's house. So I used to start in the front garden or the back garden and kick them, curl them around the house. And 2 weeks in a row, I managed to smash one of the windows, one at the back, one at the front. My dad worked for the insurance company, and he got rather embarrassed going in the second time to say, I've got to make a claim on my insurance, on my home insurance for second time, quick succession. My son keeps kicking balls into there. So I got banned from doing that. And my neighbour, Arthur Wooler, next door, I heard this banging noise off the wall when I was kind of playing keepy-uppies or whatever with football at the time a week later, and looked across, and he was hitting airflow balls with a golf club off his windows or if his walls didn't break anything. So I thought that looked like good fun. Hop the fence. Arthur was in his mid-60s at that point probably. Showed me how to do this and was hooked from then on. At 14 years old or so, 13, 14 years old.
And you'd never played before then? You'd never hit a golf ball?
No, I grew up down south. My dad played maybe once a year. I'd been to maybe a drive. My granddad was fairly into it, but I'd been to the driving range maybe 2 or 3 times a year when I was only 9 or 10 when we were down there or whatever, but never showed any real interest. And as I say, it was just down to that, but got the bug very quickly from hitting an airflow ball around my neighbour's garden and my garden and taking lumps out of it. So my dad quickly decided it better take me to a driving range or whatever. And we had, obviously, Scotland's full of local courses. We had a place called Old Granfully just up the road. Took me up there, and my neighbour took me up there, Arthur, and as I say, just hooked from that moment forward.
Fantastic. So Arthur literally introduced you, and then did he take you out for your first game on the course and stuff as well?
I don't actually remember if he was I think he probably was, yeah. There was a few neighbours that played, and my dad started to kind of show an interest as my football kind of interest waned in terms of the playing side of things. And I quickly became friendly with a few boys from school that I didn't really know, the year above me or so, a year below, that were members at the local course at Old Granfully. I had an amazing junior section at that time. Just was a safe place for parents to drop their kids at the start of an Easter holiday or the start of a summer holiday. And I used to spend, literally, my mum would work and take me there at 8 o'clock in the morning. My dad would then finish work and pick me up at 9 o'clock. Jean behind the bar was like a second mum. It was in days before mobile phones, so the knowledge that your children were safe and not causing mayhem, as I probably would have been doing if I was just walking streets, was enough for them. And I, as I say, I just got completely hooked and would spend hours on the putting green and hours on the range. And at that time, juniors weren't allowed out till 10 o'clock, 10:30, whatever the rule was. So would get there, putt around for 2.5 hours waiting on the rest of my mates turning up who were more local to the course, and then when they turned up, we'd go and play golf porkers, beans and chips at lunchtime and then go back out for the afternoon.
Fantastic. And then how did your game progress when you were a junior? What was it like at the start, and then how
It
did
was
it
awful.
come on?
I would have felt I was all right to start with, but I think my first handicap was 21 or 22. I think in the first year, I think it maybe went down to 18, but then fairly quick. I think a year later, I was off single figures and kind of moved fairly quickly through to there. And I think I got down to scratch when I was about 17 or so. So probably about 3 years to go from 20
Wow, that's quick.
to scratch or so. I'm competitive and I like to win, and I like to be, if I'm going to do something, I want to be good at it. So I practiced enough. All the bigger guys and guys at the golf club and club champion at that point in time were all, they would just became an aspiration to, I would like to be able to play in the men's team or whatever it may be at that point in time. So it just kind of went on from there.
I was going to say, I mean, playing the men's team, you must have got into the county team by that point, or was
I never
Renfrew
played.
quite competitive?
No, I didn't play county golf at boys level at all. First time I got capped at county level was a youth, so I would have been 19, I think, at that point, and I played for Renfrewshire at youth level at Ralston. In my first away game, I can't remember who I played, but it was against Glasgow Golf Union. That was the first time a guy who Ian Story, who's still heavily involved in Renfrewshire golf now, gave me my opportunity. He saw something, and again, my golf has very much become a bit of a kind of stepping stone, and I talk a lot to some of the guys coming through at international level now about playing at the level that you are capable of and learning to win at that level before you jump too quickly into kind of deeper waters. And I think that's I use football analogies quite regularly. I'm a Tottenham fan for my sins, and the greatest ever Tottenham player is Harry Kane, but you look back at his history before he got into the Tottenham team and has now become England's greatest ever goal scorer. He played for Norwich, he played for varying different lower league teams at the time, and kind of earned his badges and learned his craft at a lower level. And I think one of the things I'm keen to talk through some of the budding stars of tomorrow is we're not all born Rory McIlroy or whatever else that's ready to, but at a young age to play at the very top level. A lot of the time it's benefit to go and play against some wiser older heads and learning to win at 36 hole level or county level, whatever you want to look at it, and then before you progress into other areas. So yeah, that's
I think that's a really good, a great point though, Matt. It's easy for people to get caught up thinking about players like Rory. Lloyd Saltman was a great player at a pretty young age. I mean, there's a lot of examples just in Scotland, and then you go around the world and people are, what was the guy's name? Was it Ty Tryon or something in America, qualified for the PGA Tour at 16? Nobody's ever heard of the guy again. So I think you're right. It's easy to jump into assuming that you need to be X handicap by a certain age or you're a failure in the game, but it's far from the truth. And I mean, you're the perfect example of that.
Maybe not perfect compared to some of these guys, but yeah, I didn't play for Scotland until I was 30, so that's a rarity. I think a lot of people at my age, I'm 43 now, probably immediately think of, well, if he's played home internationals that many times, he'll have played with Lloyd at home internationals, or play with Richie Ramsey or Paul O'Hara, for example. But I didn't play with any of these guys. I played with and around them in national events, but never played on a team with them. They had all turned pro well before I got involved. I didn't get involved until 2012. So my first home internationals was with Grant Forrest, who's now obviously a European Tour winner. But Grant was winning the Scottish Amateur at Dornoch at whatever he was, 18, 19 at the time or whatever. But that was my first homes at that point in time. And players such as Graham Robertson, who's now getting himself on the Challenge Tour, and Jack McDonald from back then, and moving through players like Bob Mangta, Connor Syme. And these kind of guys, the guys I actually played home internationals with, I was just like the grandfather of the group from the World Tour.
Exactly. But what about those intervening years then? So you're obviously a really good golfer, Matt. If you look at the context of most people that play golf, you're off scratch at 17. But you've then got this 13-year period before you play for Scotland. So what was the progress in between? And you're working full time at this point, right?
Yeah, I worked full time from the moment I left school. So I've never taken golf as anything more than a serious hobby, if you like. My progression was all in stages, and maybe that's partly where some of my advice to some of the youngsters are, that you can get to places by, don't always need to go from A to Z directly. You can go via A, B, C, D, E, F before you get there. So at kind of 18, 19, I remember when I got that first county cap, it was there as a youth. My then goal was to play for the men's county team within Renfrewshire, which had players like Craig Watson, ex-British amateur champion, still playing, Andy Farmer, ex-British mid-amateur champion, Ronnie Clark, a kind of stalwart of and now seniors golf. So I had good players in and around it. There were others on top of that, Murdo Carmichael and a few others. These were experienced, slightly older heads than mine, and I wanted to get into that team. So I fought tooth and nail at county level to try and win a county tournament, and I think I eventually won the county men's stroke play and shot a course record the week after at the same course at Caldwell. Got into the county men's team, and that became back then the county game was probably slightly more important to a lot of a lot of the better players. I remember Craig Watson and Stuart Wilson in one of I think it was actually my first game. I think it was a September game away at Edsall, and it was the weekend after the home internationals, and Craig Watson and Stuart Wilson had both played and both travelled back and got to Edsall on the Friday, Saturday night to then play. You kind of don't hear that happening anymore, or much less so, especially, that was an ex or two British amateur champions turning back up to play county golf. So it's changed a bit. But yeah, I went from there, and as soon as I started playing at county level, I started to play in the 72 hole events around Scotland. And yeah, just first off, I remember the first couple of years missing most cuts, but enjoying it, but frustrated, felt I was better, practiced a bit more, tried a bit more. I'm not a great practicer at the best of time, but through sheer will and stubborn refusal to give in, just I'm gonna prove I can play to an extent of that level, and suddenly they'll become missing most cuts to making most cuts, making odd top 10, and then kind of carry on through. And in 2010, I think it was, so at that point, 2 years, I would have been about 27, 28 at that time. I won the Craig Miller Park Open which was my first ever 72 hole event.
It's not an easy place to win. I mean, I've played I played badly in the Craig Miller Park Open.
Okay.
But that is, I mean, on the surface, right, you'd look at the card and it's maybe 6,300 yards, but it's on the side. It's on the side of what feels like a mountain with, billy goats going up either side, and you're just all over the place, and the wind's blowing a hoolie most times you play it. It's really tough.
Yeah, I mean, we got it. I remember those two. I got beaten a playoff by Gavin Deere at -19. He beat me at the second hole of the playoff. He should have won the first hole, to be fair, but he beat me at the second hole of the playoff. And then the year after, I shot 20 under the year after to win by 7.
Wow.
And that was at a time when, if you go back 15 years, the courses were slightly more ready for golf at that time in April. Sadly, just however the seasons seem to be changing. These courses aren't quite as ready really for golf in early April anymore. We played Battle Trophy at the weekend. It's in reasonable condition, but it's nowhere near as what it was 15 years ago at this time of the year. The greens aren't quite as ready as they were. Just the seasons have changed. So we got it back then. And Craig Miller was in. The greens were always really good, and you had an incredible field. I mean, obviously the most famous one that's won it was Faldo, but I remember playing in a group behind Richie and Lloyd Soapman, for example, in a game. Wagger in the World Amateur Golf Ranking System has kind of taken that away from that event and many others through Scotland.
The majority of the Scottish team would be playing every year, guaranteed, right?
I'd go back to anything pre-2010, I would say, or even pre-2014, 15. Then it was your year opener. Although you had leaving for the Champion of Champions was always there as well, and it really kind of started in. And remember Lloyd won. God, what did he win? Champion of Champions, Craig Miller, and then went straight to the Irish and won the Irish as well, I think, from memory. So it was a real lead into a tournament, and it was a tournament that everybody enjoyed. The greens were pretty good. It was a great short game tune up for the things that were to come in terms of Lytham and all these other things that would be coming around the corner. Just world ranking system has changed so much for the worse ultimately, that now stops a lot of these guys playing.
And I'd love you to talk about some of the other courses then, Matt, that you'd be getting experience on. So places like Lytham, Glasgow Gales, and any others that come to mind. Obviously Crail's a fantastic place as well.
Crail's good, yeah. I mean, the events that Scottish Golf put on, you've got the ones that are consistently there. Hags has always been a fun course to play. I've never won at Hags. It's a bit of a bugbear. I've been in the top 5 there a few times. I equalled the course record with Mark Warden. And I've still never managed to get over the line there, which is a bit of a one that kind of annoys me most years when I turn up and I kind of want to get that one on the CV. But
is that 61? 61 round
62,
tags? Right.
63 even. It's 9 under, 63. I think it's past. It was par. They've changed it now. The 18th has changed now, so it's now a par 71 instead of 72. They've made the last a par 4 rather than a par 5 for safety reasons. So played it last year. That's the first time I've seen it as that. But yeah, 63 at the time, which was 9 under. That was a few years ago now as well. But yeah, I've never managed to get Hags done. But I love Glasgow Gales. It's one of my favourite courses anywhere. I just love the golf course. So the Tennant Cup's always been one that I've always had high. Charlie Green, I think, has. Well, in fact, I know because I'm lying if I say I think Charlie Green has won 6 Glasgow Open competitions in his career, and I have 5 between the Edward Trophy and the Tennant Cup.
So I'm one behind. Well. I played in.
So that went into a 72 hole for a while as well, but it's back as a 36 hole. So that's this weekend's escapade.
Right? It's gone back to 36.
Yeah, it's been 36 again for maybe 10 years or so now.
Remember, I played the Edward Trophy, and one point I was putting sun cream on my neck because I was getting burnt, and the next hole it was hailstones, and I was under a brolly trying to keep myself from getting blown away. It was hilarious.
People wonder why Scots golfers go abroad, eh?
But what a golf course. I mean, I first played it 30 years ago. It's just phenomenal, isn't it? A brilliant place.
Yeah, I love Glasgow. Always have done that. They've made significant changes on the back of the agronomist or the R&A, whoever it was, that said you need to make changes. Glasgow golf, I don't like me saying it, but I don't like all of the changes as much as I prefer. They've made it, in my opinion, an awful lot easier.
Right.
Not that I score it any better, but they've opened it up. A lot of the really bad course is gone.
Because so was that like the fourth and fifth? Would that be, or third and fourth?
So like the third, fourth, all of those have got less gorse on them, but the bigger changes, even if you remember the 8th, the short par 4 that you can kind of almost drive, and the 9th another almost drive, or you can drive. It was always to the right of both those holes was just masses of that. Most of that gorse is away. It's just sand area now, so you can hit it miles right off the 8th tee. There is gorse bushes, but you can get away with it now. Or certainly over the last. I mean, I don't know the intention of whether they're going to try and bring something back in, but even one of my favourite holes at Glasgow is the 11th, which for most people might be a boring hole, but it was dead straight, 440-yard hole, but it was always so much gorse either side that if you miss a fairway, you were effectively a good chance of losing your ball. Certainly you would be hacking out sideways more often than not. I always fancy my chances of hitting driver straight. It might not be the longest, but it was one of the straightest, so I'd be hitting driver down there when a lot of boys are hitting 5 and 4 irons and putting it in the rubbish. I'm making strokes on them by hitting driver straight. When I played in the amateur, Scottish amateur there 2 or 3 years ago, I was playing at one point out 60 yards left at the fairway at the 11th and found it in a perfect lie. It's just a bunker, effectively.
Wow.
That would have been in years gone by, wrapped up with bacon, and Lassie wouldn't have found it out where he hit it. But that's the changes, and you play the changes, don't you? So you can only play to the conditions you've got. But yes, so the changes I don't all love, but I think they'll ultimately grow in, I'm sure.
Yeah, and so then were you playing events beyond Scotland, I take it, at that point as well, like Lytham Trophy and stuff?
Yeah, I went and played Lytham. Work was always a bit of a stumbling block in terms of the British and stuff. So I've played 7 or 8 British amateurs. Only ever qualified for the match play once, although I won the qualifying for that. And so with a course record at Nairns, I suppose I did it all right the way I did it, but then got beaten as the first seed. In the first rounds, that didn't go so well for the second part of it. But yeah, went to play the Irish a couple of times. I've got an article somewhere that my mum has kept that was reasonably timely with Rory winning at the weekend, where I played at a place called Carton House for the Irish stroke play.
Oh, after that, yeah.
2004, I think it was. Rory was 15 years old and he was already being touted as the superstar Irish golf, and I somehow or other walked this round in about 5 under, which was a new course record, and had to do some media duties. So did the media duties alongside this kind of young lad at 15, sat next to me, no real idea who he was.
When he had his mop top as well, the hair coming outside the hat and everything.
Correct. He was just a young lad at that point in time. Woke up the next morning with a hangover because I'd decided the right thing would be to go and celebrate it rather than take the second round too seriously. Woke up, picked up the Irish Sun. There's a big double-page spread, and the first 3 inches or so was based on me and my course record, and the rest of this article was all based on this curly-haired superstar. And I think one of the lines was Rory fell victim to one of Carton's 126 bunkers and fell 10 shots behind leader Matthew Clark. So at least I can always have that in my locker somewhere around.
There you go.
Managed to beat Rory by 10 shots in one round at some point. Not sure I'd do that
Fantastic.
now. Right?
Yeah, and I mean that progress then continued. So to the point where it took you into the Scotland team. So what? Maybe not an easy question to answer, but what changed? So you've obviously had a lot of great results, Matt, and you've had these great rounds and everything going on. But then at some point that changed and you actually got into the Scotland team for home international. So what was the difference then over those years?
So I think in honesty, I didn't fit the profile of what Scottish Golf wanted in their team. Ultimately, the Scottish Golf has, for a number of years, and understandably so, has looked for the younger guys coming through to bring things through that can commit to the game, practice, go in the gym, do all the right things that everybody needs to do at the top level these days. But in 2012, they changed, or they put down a set of rules for qualifying for the home internationals for the first time. One of which was the top player on the world on the order of merit after the Newlands Trophy, which is now defunct 72-hole event that was at Lanark for a while.
What's that going as well?
Again, it's back as a 36-hole event again. Now it was a 36. It went to 72, and then they took it back again to a 36. But at that time, it was the Newlands Trophy was the final qualifying event, and if you were top of the order of merit, didn't matter who you were, as long as you qualified to play for Scotland, then you qualified. So through a few funky bits at work, I had a bit more time on my hands early part of 2012, so I ended up with kind of 2 or 3 months where I got to practice quite kind of hard through to about the start 11, and the goal was very clear to me at that point. It was I felt I'd missed out a couple of times on home international recognition. Unfortunately, I'd had a wee bit of feedback that maybe a few other people had said, I thought you might have got picked for that one. But as I say, when you're 28, 29, you're not quite the profile that maybe they were looking for ideally. And that became you can't stop me if I qualify first. So I think from memory, I went into the Newlands Trophy knowing that if I beat Scott Borman and scored points, or even I'm not even sure I needed to score points. I think at that time, as long as I beat Scott Borman in the event, I couldn't be beaten to that. But, so managed to qualify. I think did I win that? I can't remember if I won. I think I actually won the Newlands Trophy actually that year as the 72-hole. But yeah, I managed to qualify automatically in that. Therefore, didn't have that. So then went straight to. Funnily enough, played the European individual the week before home international. Was at Carton House again. And finished top Scot there, so I had a reasonable run in 2012.
Wow, so you were top Scot for the European Amateur too?
European Amateur was held, I think Rhys Enoch from memory won it, Welsh lad, at Carton House, but I think I finished tied 7th or tied 8th there, then went straight to home internationals at Glasgow Gales. For my debut at that, we managed to win that. I hold the winning putt against the Welsh, against David Boot. Glasgow Gales, which again, there's a lot of stuff. I've got a lot of history with Glasgow Gales. It's, as I say, one of my favourite courses. But to make the home international debut there in front of family and friends, which was quite cool. That was at the time when you were allowed caddies and things. So I had my mates caddying for me. It was a bit of an experience for all of us, effectively. And I was fortunate. I was put out game 10 against the Welsh on the last day. We needed the Irish to beat the English to do us a favour, or the other way around. I think, the English needed to beat the Irish. We needed to beat the Welsh by more points, etc., and it all fell into our hands. That's not true. I didn't hold the winning putt. I 2-putted from 40 feet across the last green to shake on a half, which got us the amount of points we believed we needed. We just needed the English to hang on against the Irish, which they fortunately did. So it led to a fun night out in Glasgow. And the last time we won the home international, sadly, was 2012. So.
I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Lomond Golf Tours for their support. Let's hear from them now.
At Lomond Golf Tours Scotland, we understand that choosing the perfect golf trip can bring its challenges. With more than 500 golf courses in Scotland and another 2,000 around the UK and Ireland, many of our guests don't know where to start. But for Lomond Golf Tours, it's not just about the golf, it's about providing an experience that will exceed expectations, that will turn dreams into realities, and that will create memories that last a lifetime. Lomond Golf Tours have helped thousands of guests build bespoke golf trips to create a magical experience. Travel in style, whether executive chauffeur travel, whether it's golf on a major championship venue or one of our hidden gems, 5-star accommodation or a boutique bed and breakfast, or is it whiskey tasting on a private boat? Lomond Golf Tours are here to help build the tour of a lifetime. Whether you're celebrating a special occasion or ticking it off your bucket list, embark on a trip that you'll remember forever. To learn more about our offerings for 2025 and beyond, visit www.lomondgolftours.com.
Now let's get back to the pod.
You kind of skimmed over it there, given the amount of time it's taken you to get to that point, Matt. But so first of all, getting the result that took you into the team, what did that feel like after all that hard work and all the years, and maybe a bit of frustration as well?
I cried, I suppose is the easiest way of putting it. I went home to my dad, and I just burst into tears, saying I'd done it. That was, to me at that point in time, was all I'd played for. I remember doing some media after I'd qualified at the Scottish Amateur, and just it being a very different route to most of the people I played with. Most of the guys you were playing with on that team were either full-time amateurs or all but. So a different way of doing it, a lot of perseverance, a lot of hard work, a lot of accepting that you can't do what they can in terms of the practice time. As I say, I'm not the biggest practicer at the best of times, but learning to find my way of preparing for an event in the best way I could do, knowing what I did well when I played well. Trusted advisor, I mentioned Craig Watson a lot. He was always been an incredibly supportive person of my golf. He's always told me I'm much better than I probably am, although he tells me the other way around. He says you don't realise how good you are, and maybe if you had some more time to practice, who knows what you would do. But I don't personally believe that to be the case. I think sometimes some people just find a way of making what you've got work. I'm not sure when you don't like practicing. With me going and practicing for 4 hours, I probably get worse, if I'm totally honest. So 20 minutes of practice is enough.
It's also what you're practicing at. Like, if it's part of the game you really need to work on, fair enough. But standing, hitting 100 balls, doing effectively the same swing 100 times, that's probably not going to do you much good. But if you're trying to shape your shots and you're hitting high, low, doing all the different pieces that can come up in a round, and maybe even playing an imaginary round, that would definitely be more helpful than just smashing balls, right?
Yeah, it just was never something I got in. It was never part of my makeup. I've never been a ball basher. I mean, I think I go Meldrum House, I go and top up my card, and I think the pro wonders where I've gone to when it takes me a year before I come back to top up my card again. You not hit that many balls, man. I mean, come on, meant to be half decent at this. Like, go and put some practice in. It's just not me. I'd rather go out on the course, as you mentioned. I'm really fortunate the courses that I've been, I'm very thankful to be an honorary member at both Meldrum House and Kilmacombe. And both of them are very relaxed courses, as much as people will probably look at them and think they're quite snooty. Pretty relaxed. And if the course is quiet, which both courses have the ability to be, never had a problem with being able to hit 2 or 3, 4 balls off a tee and same into a green, as long as you repair the green, as long as you repair what you're doing and leave it in a better place. So I'd rather play 6 holes with 3 or 4 balls than go and hit 100 balls in twice the time period. So I'd kind of do things around there. And my golf, I suppose, with some of my outcomes, it can be a little bit more hot and cold than maybe you'd want it to be, certainly for at the top level. Remember I shot level par to be second at Lytham Trophy after one round. Jackson Bra shot, I think, 2 under in front of me, and the next best score was 74, 75 or something. We were miles ahead. Next round I shot like 82 or something, or 77 or whatever. It's just that consistency level has never been day to day, can drop quite quickly from my point of view, and that's probably down to a lack of playing and a wee bit about enjoying yourself when you played a good round, and not necessarily preparing quite as well as I might have done at times for the next day.
But then, so that was getting to the team. What about when you teed it up for the first time, representing Scotland in the home internationals? What did it feel like?
That one go, I can't really remember. I was incredibly nervous. I was very fortunate. I played doubles with a good friend of mine, Ross Bell. It was his debut as well. and we won our first game, which
Brilliant.
I think helped me kind of settle slightly. Actually, I think I know from memory, doubles game against Harry Diamond, so Rory's caddy.
There you go.
Was my opponent in that one at that point in time. And yeah, it was so that kind of settled me slightly, although the rest of the week didn't go quite as according to plan until that last bit I've mentioned around with David Boot. I think I lost more games than we won, or I lost more games than I won personally. But yeah, just I was incredibly fortunate to be able to do that on a golf course I loved, in front of my home. Effectively was Kilmacombe at that point in time, or Houston, where my mum and dad lived. So a lot of neighbours, friends, golf club friends, bosses from work. I had an awful lot of people following around at that point in time, so it made it extra special for me. So yeah, it's a special memory. And one of my close friends from down south flew up, and he's a keen photographer, so he made an incredible album for me of kind of on an Apple thing for him, me, and one of my caddies got one as well, and just pictures that will stay with me. And my dad's in them. He's now sadly passed. He passed 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago now. So some kind of cool memories from that side of stuff. But it's, as you say, incredibly proud to represent your country at anything, but to do it at a sport that in the country that created the sport is quite a cool thing to be able to say you've done. And then to captain it later on, or playing captain and now captain as well, I'm very honoured to have done all of these things.
Yeah, and you mentioned Harry Diamond there. What about other people you've played against, whether at home internationals or even turning up at the tournaments? I'd love to hear about some of them.
Yeah, a number of them that have gone on to play, the likes of Bob and Connor, Grant, etc. Playing with all of these guys, and you could always tell that they had something about them that was special. You mentioned Lloyd Saltman earlier. I played with Lloyd quite a few times, but I played against him in the old format for the Scottish Amateur at Nairn back, God knows when, 2006 or whatever it might have been, before that, 2004 maybe, and just being blown away with how good he was at that point in time. He just had the ball on a string, and he could do everything, and he's probably the saddest one you didn't see quite go on to fulfil that potential but he beat Rory at Lytham, and it was really him and Rory were the two shining lights, and obviously those paths just went at funny angles effectively, but Lloyd was every bit as good at that point in time, and that's sad that he didn't go on to achieve quite what he might have done, but incredible player. Played a lot with and around a lot of the other guys that have gone on to me. Most of the guys on tour that are from the UK and Ireland, if I haven't played with them, I've played in a group behind them, etc. When I played at Eisenhower, we played in an American team that had Justin Thomas in it, whatever else, and see going out before you start with those scores that these guys are putting on the boards was quite impressive, to say the least. So you can almost say, like, oh my God, I feel like I'm behind the 8 ball before you even start here.
And for the listeners that don't know, the Eisenhower's like the World Amateur Team Championship. So where did you play that, Matt?
Turkey in 2012. So 2012 was a kind of booster year for me. I went from having never played for Scotland, suddenly got a cap.
You did the lot. You did the
European
whole lot.
individual for the first time and finished 8th, and thinking, this is going all right. Won the home internationals, and then 2 weeks later got the nod to play in the 3-man team, which is the epitome of the highest level you can get, other than Walker Cup, the highest level you can play at for Scotland. So that was an experience, but I think that was probably, until that point, there was probably still little bits in the back of my head of who knows how you could go on and you could do it this game. Now that you reach to that platform, as I say, a lot of my golf was all about progression and going up through the ranks and reaching that point. And you kind of come away from that week thinking, oh my God, I'm so, I've still got the ability to shoot something in the 80s. These guys are shooting something in the mid 60s without thinking. But we played Scottish Golf, did everything right in terms of how they do it for a program. We went out a week beforehand to Spain. We did some warm weather training. But for me, that was the wrong. If I had my time back, I'd have just turned around and said, look, I'll just meet you in Turkey and just let me prepare for this event on my own. And I think it's really interesting when you start paying more attention to what guys do. The likes of Garcia doesn't hit any practice balls before he goes and plays. Whereas that would be me. There would be many jokes. I think most people have got pictures of me sat playing pool 15 minutes before my tee time back in the day, rather than being on the range or in the putting green. And it might not be the right way, and it might not be the way that the guys the best in the world are ever going to do it. But if it's the way you play your best golf and you're selected to do something, then go and do what makes you play your best golf. That might not be shooting a 65. I think it was Chris Williams on the American team, shot 64 or 65, 63, whatever it was, first round. I might not have had that in my locker, but I probably had 67 or 66, etc. if I'd played quite nicely. But if you don't prepare the way you prepare, you're ultimately failing before you start. And me playing a week's worth of golf before going out there, then 2 practice rounds, then being on a practice range, hitting balls, trying to find something. By that point, I was completely over golf. Just, as I say, wish I had my time back to be able to say, look, just no, I'm not doing that. In fact, you know what? Don't pick me if that's what you're insisting on.
Yeah, and it's interesting you hear about that with even the Ryder Cup now, and I think they are more and more trying to keep the players away from all the kind of surrounding events that take them away from just the golf, and trying to get them to just be right. Look, Monday night you're going to have a dinner with whatever guests, blah blah blah. Then Tuesday, we're cutting back on that a wee bit, and Wednesday you're just doing what you want.
Yep.
And then it's just cutting back to make it pretty much like they're just at a tour event with their family and respecting their time so they can play the best golf. And it makes sense, right? There's no point in putting people through an experience that's nothing like what they do day to day and then expecting them to play.
Yeah, and a lot for the younger ones coming through, a lot of that's knowledge of actually what makes you tick and what makes you play, because we can at times. Again, Scottish Golf do a great job of doing their best with what they can do and trying to support and do what they see as being correct. But part of my kind of input around the team and stuff we do now is preparation and understanding and making sure that the kids, because a lot of them are kids, really understand what their prep needs to look like. How do they prepare for an event? Because again, I don't want to take a team to the European Team Championships this year and say, well, you're going to go and do this on the Monday, that on the Tuesday, and then we'll play on the Wednesday. Like, if that's not what you do, I need to know. If you sit there and play a PlayStation on the Monday normally for 3 hours, then take your PlayStation and let's play PlayStation for 3 hours. If that's what you need to do, that's what you need to do. I need to know it up front, because sometimes that might not be the greatest, or that might not fit in with what has to be done at some of these events. But equally, on a more serious note, a lot of the time, someone like me, I would never have played golf the day before the event. So that's just not. I might have hit 50 balls on the range, but I would never play a round. I don't play practice rounds. So when you suddenly go out to even things like home internationals, when I was at the time, you used to get two practice rounds. Right, we're going to play Monday, play Tuesday, or whatever. So I'd be sitting there going, I don't want to play Tuesday, and this isn't the right thing for me. It's not how I do it. So we've got to try to ensure that the players are as best prepped for them. And sometimes that means, if they can evidence that's how I play my best golf, then fair enough. If you're not playing golf today, what are you doing? I want to know what you're doing. You don't get to just go and sit around and do nothing all day or waste time away. But what is it you would normally do, and how can we try and incorporate that into our preparation for you as best we possibly can?
Yeah, it's really good. And then, Matt, before we jump into your captaincy role, I mean, you still play. So a lot of really good recent results as well, playing in things like Scottish Amateur Championships. So what does that feel like these days, being, I guess, a little bit more experienced than some of the other guys, and they're all playing full-time amateur, almost professional, arguably. How does it feel to go up against those guys now?
The hardest part is I'm talkative, and when you're 43, you're 42, 40, in your 40s, etc., you're not really that relevant to a 19-year-old, and most of them are 19 or younger. So you kind of walk up and, what were you doing last night? I'm just listening to Justin Bieber on my phone or whatever else. So, I'm being facetious. I've not had too many of them say that, but it's not that far off. They don't. So having a conversation with them is more difficult. A lot of them know who you are. They know what you've done. A lot of them will have parents walking around who then know, we know who he is. He's played for Scotland, and all these bits and pieces. And therefore, most of them are perfectly pleasant. Probably more pleasant than I was at 19-year-old to a 40-year-old fuddy-duddy, if I'm totally honest. But you're on the course at times for, I think last year the first round at the Castle course for me was 5.5 hours, and it's a long time to spend in a 3-ball with two boys that, when you add their age together, that you don't get to yours yet. So it's different. It's still enjoyable to a lesser extent than it was, if I'm totally honest. My motivation is probably drained a little bit since I removed myself from, or I retired effectively after the 2022 home internationals. I just said that I think I did playing captain there, and the R&A had changed it to being a combined event at that point with the women as well, which is absolutely fine, and don't have any issues with that. But the manner in which it was dealt with that first year, where they put a male foursome out, followed by a female foursome, followed by a male foursome, female foursome, to do a captaincy role at that point, I found next to impossible. They learnt from that fairly quickly, last year when I watched it, and it was all the women went out first, and then the men went out second. and vice versa through the days, which at least makes some
Right.
more sense. That allows it from a captaincy point of view and from a consistency point of view much easier. But that first year was just, or 2022 was just a time where I just kind of looked and went, I think I've had enough of playing, and I've got two young children. I've got an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old, and I think at one point I looked, and over a 3-year period, I think I'd taken a grand total of 9 days holiday for them in a 3-year period. So that's not easy to palate when you start looking at it. You start thinking, have I really done the right? Am I really showing the right behaviours here towards my kids? So a whole host of reasons just to change things around slightly. But I still have a competitive juice inside me that wants to play. But when I get there, I'm not quite as keen half the time. But there's certain events that I'll still get up for. I would really like to somehow tie Charlie Green at 6 Glasgow Opens. So this weekend, again, with trophy, no matter whether I'm feeling it or not feeling it, I'll be putting everything into it from that side of things. The same with the Tennant Cup come later in the year if I'm playing in that as well.
Fantastic. And then captain in the Scotland team. So what's that been like?
So I was fortunate. I did that as a playing captain for I think 5 years. I did that for 4 or 5 years. Interesting and gives you a different insight into some of these things. I've had the conversations at times where I've had to phone someone up and tell them they've not been selected. That's a hard conversation, but I do that from a job point of view. That's a fairly run-of-the-mill thing for me to have hard conversations with people, so that's fine. But it's emotive to them. The ones that have taken it hardest, I've been thankful or really pleased that they've managed to get their cap a year or two later, which shows that they've maybe taken the words that maybe I have had some sort of influence where I've said, look, just keep doing what you're doing, or go and work on these parts. It's just not your time at this point, but you will get there. Don't let this break you, kind of idea. And it's nice to have that. I captained the team, as I said, in 2022 at I can't remember the name of the course, with British Amateurs there last year in Ireland. Can't remember. But I had Connor and Gregor Graham in the team. Incredible talents. The dad coming over, Stuart was over, and Connor was only 16 or 15, 16, 17, whatever he was at the time. Just a boy, effectively, but being able to have some sort of influence on these guys and let them see that how you behave in a national jersey at times, not saying that either of those two are anything to worry about at all, but just imparting some experience, imparting some life lessons on some younger boys is now that grandfather figure role, that, and hopefully relevant enough that they can hear it from you, when they get told of what you have achieved or where you have played and what you've played Eisenhower and you've done a few of these other things, then at least gives them some relevance. Okay, right, he might be a bit old, but he's not that old, and he can still play a little bit, so he can still
you can
produce the odd score here and there. So.
Definitely play, Matt, that's for sure. So look, we'll jump into a couple of shorter questions.
Yep.
Favourite Scottish golf course? You might have touched on this already, but what's your favourite in Scotland?
Loch Lomond would definitely be my favourite, closely followed by Glasgow.
There you go. And then you might have said this already, but best player you've played against?
It would be Lloyd was incredible, but there's also, I would have Lloyd and a guy called Stuart Hagstead, who is an American amateur that he's played at least 3 Walker Cups now. So never made it as a pro. I think he did try as a pro. I'm not actually certain, but I only played 2 rounds with him, but he was incredible. His ball striking was on a different level to anything else I've seen other than Lloyd. So of the two, they would be head and shoulders above anyone else from a ball striking point of view.
There you go. Most memorable shot for you?
For me, I had a 3-wood when I was about 22 years old at Leven's last hole, across the ditch to about 2 inches from about 235 yards away into a howling gale, playing with a guy called Ryan McKenzie. And Ryan, anytime I see Ryan, he still comes back and he says, that is the greatest shot I've ever seen. Like, I've never seen anything like it. It was equally stupid to even be attempting it, and how it quite got to 2 inches or so, I don't know. But yeah, probably the best shot I ever hit, to be fair.
Okay, and 3 partners to make up your dream 4 ball?
Barry Hume, partly because there's every chance that he could do something phenomenal, but at the same time, he's as hot-headed as I am at times. So you always get some entertainment out of him. Tiger, and I'd probably go for Gareth Bale.
There you go. That's a different one. I like that. Okay, so just wrapping up here then, Matt. Just reflect on, what's golf meant to you over all these years? What does it mean to you as a sport and you for your life?
I think the fact I told you earlier, I had 9 days holiday in 3 years for my kids. When I get 30 odd days a year, probably says enough. Golf for me was, it started as I say, it started with hitting those balls off my neighbour's wall, became very, very quickly engaged with it. But my best man, my best friend is someone I met through golf. My close group of friends I've got are all met through golf. I met the mother of my children, my wife, through golf. Karen was the Scottish physio when I got involved before we then kind of started up a relationship. So ultimately, golf has just meant kind of pretty much everything. It's been all consuming for 20 odd years, probably longer in all truth. Like most things that are great in your life, they have downsides, and there are areas now that when you look back on and you go, there's things that I haven't done, there's things I've missed out on because I've been so determined to do what I could do in that 10-year, 11-year stretch playing for Scotland. Undoubtedly, there is bits I look back on, I'm incredibly proud to have done what I've done, but there are areas of it at the same time that you look back and go, I could have done something slightly different there, and probably would have been for the better of me, myself, or family from that side of things. So, but ultimately, it's a game that allows you to play it with a 70-year-old and a 7-year-old. Brings all sorts of walks of life together. I've got to play with some fairly important people, some billionaires and all sorts of things, and to wander around a place where breathing air that you probably shouldn't breathe with some people, etc. And they're the ones that are looking at you as if to say, right, you own this place, how do you do this? Is another way of just an equalizer in life on these incredibly successful people that they're the ones looking at you going, right, okay, show me how to do this, and how do I do that, and how do I get better at this? And from a competitive point of view, it's a sport that's allowed me to compete way beyond what I would have been able to, even if I had been a bit better at football. I'd have been done well and truly by now. From that side of things, I certainly wouldn't have ever got to the level of being able to do that anyway. But yeah, it's just meant, and it still does, it means it's still a huge part of why when I wake up in the morning and the sun's shining, that I think, right, I need to find another way to go and win another couple of these events. But I'm not the greatest social golfer. I don't particularly enjoy social golf.
There you go.
I just want to play to shoot a low score and play other players of a similar stature. Playing against my dad when he was around off 13 and giving him however many blooming strokes, etc., was never quite something I enjoyed as much as I probably should have. So hopefully in the years to come I will mellow slightly from that and start enjoying just social golf. I quite like the social side once I've finished my stuff. I've certainly had enough rounds where I've been slightly too hungover to be playing good golf the next day in a competition. But yeah, from that side of thing, yeah, it's meant an awful lot, and I've been very fortunate to meet and play against some people that are now, you get to watch the TV and say I played with him or I played against him or beaten that person and things like that. So yeah, very, very fortunate, but it's an incredible game.
Brilliant. Well, listen, thanks so much for joining, Matt. It's been great to hear from you, and thanks for sharing your story. Fantastic.
You're welcome. Thanks very much, Ross.
That's it for this episode of Line by Golf. A big thanks to Matt Clark for joining us and sharing his experiences playing with the Scotland amateur team. If you enjoyed the episode, share it with your friends and remember to follow the show. It really helps grow the audience. Thanks also to Lomond Golf Tours for the continued support. For a truly unforgettable golfing experience, get in touch with Ian and his team. Until next time, take care and thanks for tuning in.